You know, when I was in high school, the idea of having a gay anything, much less a club or a summit, was something that just wasn't talked about. But times have changed, and because of the work of people like my next guest, Jason Galisatus, there are groups like the Bay Area Youth Summit. Well, welcome. Thank you. And I probably botched your name. I apologize.
It's all right, Galisatus.
Galisatus, they're great.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about how the idea for a gay Bay Area Youth Summit came about, because it was your idea, correct?
Well, it's not a completely original idea, but the GSAs in San Mateo County, I'm actually friends with all their presidents, and I had figured, why don't we get all the GSAs together one time and just talk about what we want to do.
And by GSA, you mean Gay Service Association?
Gay Straight Alliance.
Gay Straight Alliance,
yeah. And I'd want to bring them all together and just talk about, what are we doing in our schools, how, share resources. And eventually, and that idea sort of grew a little bit more into wanting to do a summit for the entire Bay Area, and not just for GSAs, but we want to open up to the entire LGBT and allied community. So that's the birth of the Bay Area Youth Summit, and that was in December of 2010.
Now, you are now a senior in high school, correct?
Yes, I'm a senior.
So this came to you when you were a...
sophomore around. I became the president of my GSA in sophomore year, and that's when I had all these ideas about starting this summit.
And you came out of the closet when you were a freshman?
Yes, when I was a freshman.
And you have two sisters in middle school?
I have two sisters in
So your family's had quite an interesting 4 years.
They have. It's a little difficult for them, to have a son who's really active in the community, because, primarily they're concerned about my safety, because as somebody who's really active in my school, I haven't received the worst, I haven't been treated poorly, but there have been instances, where I, as a very out member of the LGBT community, some people don't like that, and they'll show it, and that's the thing that my parents are mainly concerned about.
So how do they show it? Have you been teased? Have you been called names?
Well, actually, during a rally that my GSA organized my sophomore year in my PE class, there was about 5 boys who surrounded me and started yelling epithets, I will say, to me, and this was during school in the middle of a class, and that was really hard for me and that was during my sophomore year, and that was difficult because I'd never really experienced homophobia to that degree, much less to my face.
Were these boys that you knew?
Not really. They were in my class, so I had seen them before, but they're not people I talked to.
I remember when I was in high school, PE class was always the most terrifying part of my day.
Well,
had it ever been scary for you?
Oh, yeah. PE is the worst. Because it's not so much the teacher's fault, but it's hard to control. It's just when you have all the boys in one area, and they're, it just fuels, the alpha complex in them.
So what did the PE instructor do?
Well, upon hearing about it, he kicked one of the perpetrators out, who was one of the most vehement. The other ones, I think, got suspended or something like that. But the school treated it very well, and they handled it appropriately, in my opinion. That being said, it happened in the first place, when it shouldn't have. But that's not necessarily the fault of the school, but I think it's just a reflection on how the society around us is.
Have you seen the boys since then?
Yeah, actually, interestingly, I had the choice of whether or not to return to that PE class, because they thought, this must be difficult. You may not want to confront them again. But I figured, I can't just hide from them forever. So I decided just to go back to the PE class and remain with them. And actually, it made them respect me a little bit more. And I kind of got to be somewhat, I'm not going to say friends, but we were friendly and somewhat acquaintances by the end of the year. And I think it was a great, it was a great situation that ultimately happened. It wasn't ideal, but I think in terms of how it could have been, there were no repercussions afterwards. But it went the best it could have, and I'm glad that it went well.
There has been a lot of attention in the last few months, about bullying. As gay people, we've all experienced it at some point in our life, I believe. I think that's a safe, whether it's spoken or not.
Right.
But until recently in the news, I never really thought that it might result in the death of a young person. What has that been like to be a high school student and hear that there are other high school-age students literally bullied to death?
Well, I don't think it surprised me. I don't know if it surprised anyone in the LGBT community. I think what was the surprising part is the degree that it affects people. And having grown up in the Bay Area, we haven't seen too severe bullying to that extent. But I met Tammy Aberg, the mother of one of the sons who committed suicide, and her story is just so heartbreaking. To know that he was such a vibrant person, and just because some kids bullied him so much. As a high school student, I can see where it can be so emotionally destructive to a person, and it is upsetting to me, but it's not surprising to me. I knew that this was happening, and I'm glad that people are starting to finally recognize that bullying is not just something that we can. That's just some normal part of the high school experience. It's something that we have to address.
You think it is a normal part of the high school experience?
I think society has come to accept it as part of the normal high school experience, and we don't believe that it should be. I mean, me working as a GLSEN ambassador and working as a Bay Area Youth Summit executive director, we don't believe that this should happen in schools. And I think that society has become all too comfortable with bullying and with all the problems associated with it.
Mm-hmm. Now, your school is in San Mateo County.
Yes.
So about 25 miles south of San Francisco.
Right.
Is it really just 25 miles, or is it a world away?
I wouldn't say it's a world away, but it's definitely extremely different. I don't think it's homophobic. I just don't think it's as exposed to LGBT issues as San Francisco is.
Even in 2011.
Even in 2011, people know about LGBT issues, but they're not as well versed. And I think that part of the way to fight bullying is to just educate people that the LGBT community is a community. It's not just these people you see on TV for pride. It's a thriving community of human beings, and I think that that's what's lacking in sort of smaller, more rural or suburban areas.
So much of the bullying. So much of the publicity around the bullying that led to the suicides that was in the news recently was about the role of social media in that bullying. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, what have you, Foursquare. How much is social media important on the other side, getting the word out and educating about your issues proactively?
Well, I think with all the situations in Egypt and in the Middle East, we can see the profound effect of social media on social change. I mean, we see, these huge demonstrations are all being organized via social media. And the same is true here. I mean, most of the events that my GSA puts on are publicized through Facebook and other social media methods. And I think it's crucial. I don't understand how they do it without it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're Generation C, so...
Right, it's different, but I mean, we definitely use it. It's a good way because everybody's on Facebook mainly, and I think it's the prime way of getting the word out of events.
You've talked about another organization which some people may not be aware of, GLSEN, which really, I guess, in a sense, is the parent organization of the Bay Area Youth Summit. In a sense, yes, or it's affiliated? Not
really. They're separate. I personally happen to be affiliated with both, but they're not really affiliated. Their missions are very much similar, though. Both are driven to end bullying in schools.
And tell us, what does GLSEN stand for?
Sure. GLSEN is the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network.
Now, GLSEN works with schools all over the country.
Yes.
To promote education and awareness. It's been around for a long time now.
Yeah, about over 20 years, 30 years.
Do you see some progress just in your 4 years, almost 4 years in high school? Has it changed?
I've seen incredible progress. I mean, I think from Prop 8 till now is just, I think that is decades of change that's happened in this short period. I mean, I remember because the situation happened my sophomore year in 2008. And now, I can't imagine that happening to anyone at my school. I mean, it's so different even now. That doesn't mean it's stopped altogether, but it means it's significantly improved. And I think largely, honestly, because of Prop 8, I think it brought so much attention to the issue of discrimination against LGBT people, and people realize that this discrimination happens, and that really woke a lot of people up. So honestly, I think Prop 8 did a lot more for our side than it did theirs.
So less than 2 years after coming out of the closet, you formed an organization. You're speaking out in your school, in the media. So when are you running for public office?
Interestingly, you ask. I'm considering running for District 8 Supervisor of San Francisco. That's actually my big goal. I hope to be mayor, but that's a stretch. But District 8 was the office was the same area that Harvey Milk had, and how better to to affect social change and follow in the steps of Harvey Milk himself.
Mm-hmm. What would you like people to know about the Bay Area Youth Summit? Who is it aimed at? Gay people, our friends, our enemies?
Well, it's aimed at primarily LGBT youth in high school. That being said, we'd like to open it up to the entire community. So we are really, really reaching out to the adult community because in my opinion, in the Bay Area Youth Summit's opinion, it takes the entire community to work together to end this problem because it's not just something that one part of the LGBT community can work on. It's something that we all have to do together. So we're really reaching out to the entire community and especially the allied community. They're crucial as well in really affecting change.
So your two sisters in middle school, what do they think of their big brother?
I think it's like, whatever. He's just doing his thing. But, the older of the two sisters is considering running for president of her GSA. So I'm hoping she is.
So it runs in the family. All this activism runs in the family.
I'm hoping it will.
Thank you, Jason. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
Next up, our conversation with Scott Miller and our conversation about who in TV and the movies gets the LGBT community correct and who doesn't get it correct. We'll be right back.